crest a low hill in the forest, finding it lit by scattered hellfire. In the center, a demon of the old world unfurls its wings, welcoming you to your last breath. Today I want to pay tribute to two figures in gaming that we've lost in the last 3 months. In November, we lost Rebecca Heinemann, co-founder of Interplay, and a legend in the video game community. Programmer, advocate for transgender video game developers, and recipient of this year's GLAAD 2025 Gaming Icon Award, I guess that would be last year, Gaming Icon Award. Rebecca was also the spouse of Janelle Jacquet, who passed away in early 2024. Rebecca had a hand in many of the games I loved as a child, influenced the kind of games I enjoy to this day. During her time, Rebecca co-founded several game design studios and had success wherever she went. In late December, Tim Kask passed away, December 30th, in fact. Tim was a playtester for the early D&D version and became the first paid TSR employee in 1975. Tim's first editor of the Dragon magazine, which would grow into Dragon magazine over the years. A teacher, editor, and speechwriter, Tim came back to the game community in 2010. I can understand the frustration with nostalgia that plagues the TTRPG and video game industries. But there are people who were there at the beginning, whose ideas and opinions and hard work shaped the games we play today. More than that, they shaped how we think about games. In some ways, they expanded our worldviews, and yet, at the end of the day, brought us joy. Today at Go Indie Now, we wish both Rebecca and Tim farewell and whatever lies in the space between the stars. All right. Now on to the news. Actually, on to what's coming up. So we have some news bits to tell you about, and we have a couple great interviews. One with Jessica Nettles. You may know Jessica as a player in Hit the Dice, as a member of panels for many of our This Week in Indies, but also as the GM of our Cryptid Capture Corps episodes of Hit the Dice, which have been a big success over the years. I should say over the last year and a half. So we have an interview with Jessica, and then a friend of mine, Christopher Helton, joined us for an interview talking about their role-playing experience and their Dortmund blog, and the experience working in the industry, as well as some of their own indie games. So I think you'll find that to be a great interview. Both interviews are edited down to manageable bits because both went a lot longer than expected. And it is our intention to put up both full interviews on the Go Indie Now network later this month, so next week and the week after. So you'll get the full interviews. I highly recommend that you watch them because they're both fantastic. But today, you get a taste from both. Okay, on to the news. And I promised that I would do this, no matter how silly it was. But just remember too, we will have links for all the news bits in the description. Now, I think it's already there. So we have links to all the news bits. So here we go. Thunder, Thundercats. Oh, sorry, I was not more enthusiastic. I don't want to wake the actual cats in the house. As of today, I believe there are 6 days left in the Thundercats Kickstarter. The roar of the Thundercats. It goes once more. For the first time ever, Thundercats comes to the tabletop in an officially licensed role-playing game compatible with D&D 5e 2024 rules. Very important. Plenty of people are still playing the 5e 2014 rules or some variant thereof. But we wanted to make sure that, or I want to make sure that folks understood that Thundercats is going to be compatible with the 2024 version. Designed and written by Linvander Studios and published by Dynamite Entertainment, this 240-page hardcover rulebook captures the excitement, drama, and adventure of the beloved animated and comic series, letting players step into the world of Third Earth like never before. This is your all-in-one reference to start playing and experiencing the action and adventure of the world of Thundercats. With this book, you can do it all. Make characters, run adventures, fight creatures, and set the Thundercats campaign with confidence. Hopefully, we have a few Thundercats fans. Well, we do have some. So the AF Stewart is here. Hi, AF. Thank you always for supporting us. Yes, thank you, Elizabeth. CCC has been awesome, and it will continue to be. There will be more CCC in the future. And AF Stewart says, I clicked the Kickstarter link the minute I saw Thundercats and shared it. Yep, fantastic. And we say hello to Jenna as well. Hello, Jenna. All right. So, yes, if you're a fan of Thundercats, speaking of nostalgia, I think you'll probably enjoy that. Speaking of nostalgia again, and I think there are 5 days left for this particular Kickstarter, Toon 2nd Edition is on Backerkit. So Thundercats is on Kickstarter. Yep. Toon is on Backerkit. 5 days left as of tonight, Saturday. Remember those great Saturday morning cartoons, or those zany animation favorites you devoured after school or binged on your streaming platform of choice? They're all here, and you're the star. Be a panda, a postman, a possum, a pterodactyl, whatever you want. In Toon, anything can happen. Nobody ever gets killed. Being punched out, blown up, steamrolled, don't worry. You'll be back next scene, ready for more. The new 2nd edition features simplified character design, more than a dozen cartoon adventures, more and silly tables, and lots of advice for the game master. Oops, we mean the animator. If you're already familiar with the Toon's mayhem, you can scroll down to What's New in 2nd Edition. It's a big blinky thing that's What's New in 2nd Edition. You can't miss it. New to the mayhem of Toon? Welcome aboard. Happy to have you. Watch your step. We dropped an infinite hole and a squid somewhere around here. Toon offers an entry-level role-playing experience for the whole family, ages 6 and up. I've played Toon once, back in the early 90s, but it'd been out before then, so is huge. So, all right. Sagaborn D100 Starter Kit. The Sagaborn D100 Starter Kit is a free book to help begin telling adventures in the world of the Dark Return using the streamlined Sagaborn D100 system. For those of you who don't know, Sagaborn did originally use the OGL license, and I think was more 3.0 than 3.5. If my memory might be incorrect in that. Either way, it's a good system. And the folks over at Sagaborn decided to take advantage of Chaosium's license of the BRP, basic role-playing system. Itself is over 40 years old, and turned Sagaborn, the Dark Return, into a D100 system. The kit gives a story guide, which is the game master, and players everything they need to start their first adventure. What's inside? Getting started, a quick overview of Sagaborn D100, the world, explore the major themes of Dark Return setting, system overview, a condensed look at the rules for making and playing a character. Characters, 7 pre-gen characters for players to choose from. An adventure, the heroes find themselves prisoners of the Ulfgard Empire. An escape is planned. and the Story Guides Codex, rules and advice on running a Sagaborn D100 game. I'm always a fan of skill-based systems and the D100 system, so I encourage you to jump on that and see what it's like. You may find that you enjoy that better than other systems. I suspect some of you will if you've never tried it before. If you're trying to figure out where you've heard BRP and all that from, it's basically a system that Call of Cthulhu, RuneQuest, all those Chaosium games use. Okay, there we go. All right. Already back on Backerkit. Already backed on Backerkit was Crack the Sun from MCDM, the folks who gave you Draw Steel earlier this year. If you remember, Draw Steel made it to my top 5 TTRPGs of 2025. Check that out on our end of year specials. Crack the Sun is the first official epic campaign for Draw Steel. 5 acts. Each act is a whole level's worth of adventure, so 16 victories, designed to really show folks what Draw Steel can do and give everyone a tour through the worlds of Orden and the Timescape. The Timescape contains a lot of metal Helton nonsense, sure, but it also contains classic fantasy nonsense. What better way to illustrate that than an adventure that starts with rescuing helpless villagers, defeating an army of hobgoblins, then pursuing your enemy across 2 worlds? That's Draw Steel. If you're one of these first to believe and you back this campaign, we're going to do our level best to make the cool stuff we know how to make. That's the promise. Well, the campaign raised a lot more money than we asked for. We put it all to work and into new initiatives like our Draw Steel VTT, the Codex, which our patrons seem to really like. So if you're a fan of MCDM, you want to support them as a company, or you're already a fan of Draw Steel, which some of you are, you can go ahead and probably do late backing. I believe it's got late backing like a lot of Kickstarters do. All right. Cobalt Press Nighthunters AMA. It will be on the try it again. It'll be on the Nighthunters Discord AMA, January 12th at 3 p.m. PST. So it's going to be 6 p.m. EST for those who are used to EST. Join us in the Cobalt Press Discord this Monday, January 12th, for a double bubble serving of Toil and Trouble. Designers Sarah Madsen and Celeste Konowich. Celeste, I hope I got that right. Spill the witch's brew on numbers with design insights, behind-the-scene details, and answers to your most scarifying questions. Survive to the end, and you may even find yourself with secret knowledge you won't get anywhere else. See you there, if you dare. So, absolutely, highly recommend. Cobalt Press has impressed folks over the years, and some good design chops there. And hey, AMAs are a lot of fun, so highly recommend folks jump in there and take a look. Okay, so we are going to drop into our first interview with Jessica Nettles. Get this up there. Welcome, everyone. This is one of the 2 Zero Mean You're Dead interviews we have going for this month. We're kind of hoping that this will happen every month now. But I wanted to introduce, I'm SM Hillman, as you'll probably hear many times during this broadcast. But I wanted to introduce the person I'm with, Jessica Nettles, author, GM, crocheter or sewer or both?
I do both. I also knit and cook.
Knitter, okay. Gotcha. I, as someone who doesn't really do any of those, it's sometimes hard for me to figure out what folks are doing.
It's okay.
And absolutely, one of the wonderful things about with Jessica is that not only she has been on episodes of This Week in Indies, but has been both a player and a GM for um, Hit the Dice, which is, as folks may or may not know, is our once monthly actual play where we dive into indie games. Thank you for being on with us tonight. I appreciate it very much.
Oh, thank you for inviting me. I'm excited.
So tell folks a little bit about yourself, if you wouldn't mind.
So I'm an author. I do all the things that Sean said I do. I write historical fantasy, Southern Gothic horror. Um, I'm reaching into writing games. I blame Bob Magoo. This is Bob's fault. I've toyed with the idea for a long, long time because I've been gaming for a long, long time. So
Right.
he just kind of opened the door a little bit and said, "Hey, you want to come play?" And I'm like, "Oh, okay." And so I tried my hand at it, and it's kind of fun. Um, so yeah, I game. I run games, which is still surprising to me. I'm still shocked that I am a game master. It's kind of a strange thing.
Why does that shock you so much?
I never, when I started, if you had asked me in 1983, God, I feel old, that I would run games eventually, I would have laughed because I'm not what you would call like a rule lawyer. And I feel
Mhm.
like, on some level, I feel like a good DM has to be kind of a rule lawyer. I've learned that's not true. So that kept me from being a game master for a really long time, is that fear of not knowing the rules well enough to run a game really good. That has changed somewhat, and my confidence is a lot different than way back then, right?
Right.
Um,
Yeah. That's fantastic to hear. But you're right. In that time,
yeah,
I feel like that was a prevalent attitude, right? The GM or DM, whichever, had to be the most knowledgeable about the rules, had to be able to make
hmm
snap judgments about the rules, had to always follow the rules, or at least had to make sure that they were clear about the rules they were going to change. This whole
right,
litany of things that a game master, dungeon master had to be.
right.
Um, almost none of which is actually true.
Oh yeah,
Uh, but it was really intimidating for a lot of folks, right? To start
right,
to go ahead and start with that.
right. And I think a lot of GMs played that up,
Yes.
and it because of the power. I mean, to be honest.
Yeah.
Um, So I didn't become a game master until probably 1997 or 98, out of necessity,
Okay.
out of necessity, because I basically divorced my GM.
That's one way to do it.
Yeah, uh, and I had nobody to run a game, and I inherited part of our party, and they were like, "We want to continue gaming." And I wanted to continue gaming. And I had kind of sort of, and I can admit this because he's dead. I sort of stole some of his, no, most of his stuff when I moved. And so I'm like, I could do this, I think.
Right.
I could do, I don't know, I'll try. And so then I ended up running an all ladies game for about 3 years, um, out of necessity.
Yeah.
Um,
What game did you all play, or
We
were you all
played
playing?
we played AD&D. We played second edition. Yeah, second edition AD&D, and it was all homebrew. It was all homebrew. I created based on a little bit on the world that we had been in, and just kind of went from there. And we played until finally all of us started like doing things, like some folks got married and moved off, and some folks split away for other things, and so we had, and suddenly we were all adults and doing adult things.
Right.
Yeah. So, but I was spending time like at lunch, at work, writing what was going to happen the next weekend, things like that. It was a good experience. It was a really good experience, and it taught me that I did not have to know all the things to make a satisfying story, which was great.
Did two questions.
Okay.
The first one, um, you've played in mixed gendered and mixed sex groups, but playing in a mono, if we're all guys, let's be honest, if we're all guys, no one would blink blink an eye at it, right?
Right.
But all women playing a
Right.
game together, which I think is fantastic, probably raised at the time a few eyebrows if people heard about it. Did you get any pushback, or did you guys not care?
We didn't care.
Yeah.
We didn't care, and I think we were situated in such a way that we really didn't bump up against a lot of other gamers. It was kind of strange. We came at the borders over. There was a there was some borders over on East Connector in Austin.
Okay.
It was not a gaming, haven or anything.
Right.
It was a bookstore. So I'm sure some people were looking at us over the shelves going, what the hell are they doing? But I mean, community pushback, no, because we were like we were probably on the fringe of the gaming community. I really didn't connect with the major gaming community at large here in Atlanta until a good 15 years later,
Okay.
which sounds really strange, I know, but it's true because I was raising kids and, doing
Well,
all
I
that
mean,
stuff.
Atlanta's such a big place. You can play with a bunch of people in one part of it and never play with people from another.
Oh, yeah.
Uh,
And
yeah.
yeah. And there was no, at that point, though, I don't think there was gigabytes wasn't in existence at that point, I don't think,
Yeah. I don't think so.
which is the place in Cobb County to game now. So there wasn't any going over there, and so there was no connection. I think if there had been a gigabytes at that point and we had gone over there, yeah, we would have gotten some pushback. People would have been wondering what we were
So, Cryptid Capture Core. I
doing.
think people really, the players, and we've really got a set group that play that game, really sort of glommed onto that, and,
Oh,
and
yeah.
and it caught their attention, and
Yeah.
obviously it caught yours as well. If for those who don't know, about an hour or 90 minutes, depending where you are, up the road in Blue Ridge, Georgia, there's the Bigfoot Museum. So cryptids are a thing that's talked about around here.
Hmm.
What is it about cryptids that makes for good gaming?
One, they're familiar. We all know about them. We all have, no matter where you live in the United States, there's a cryptid in your neighborhood. I mean, not right in your neighborhood, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
We all have a story or a myth or a legend of something that's not human. I think there's that. Also, there's that X-Files factor.
Right.
I mean, that's why I love it. I love that X-Files factor. It's that whole thing of sending somebody in, not knowing exactly what you're going to find,
Right.
and telling a story about what happens when they get there. Love
Yeah.
that.
Agreed.
Also, from a gameplay standpoint, it's pretty simple to pick up, and it's also a pretty simple game to like game the way that I do, which is not lean so much on the dice as much as on the storytelling,
Gotcha.
and that's why I like it.
Absolutely, I agree with that. You know, it's there's a lot of fluidity, a lot of table talk, and that's not wasted. It's conversations with people that don't necessarily always require a die roll to adjudicate a situation, right?
Right, right. And the character interplay is always nice too. And because we have a set group and set characters, there's been some character growth, and relationships have grown, I think.
Yeah, yeah,
So there's play back and forth now, which is really nice.
yeah, yeah. I think that if you watch from the first to the latest, you'll notice that some of the players or some of the characters are definitely reacting to, instead of just doing their own thing, they're sort of reacting to what each other is doing. and pairing off and trying to use their skills cooperatively.
Well, and I love the in jokes. They've got in jokes now. And, if you watch from the beginning, you can see where some of those in jokes have come from, and you can be fun. Um, and I love that. And, just the continued poking back and forth, but they still get the job done. Right.
Right. Exactly. So yeah, it's a fun crew. If you haven't watched it, I highly recommend that you do. Speaking of the next Hit the Dice, we have. I'm happy to say we've nailed down the next day. In theory, January 19th, a Monday, 8 to 10 is the next cryptid capture core. Stay tuned for what cryptid they will be after. We haven't quite decided that one yet. Where can they find you on the internet?
They can find me at jessicanettles.author.com. I really do know my website. You can find me on Facebook and Instagram. On Instagram, it's Steampunk English, and you'll see pictures of my cats, of my crochet. Occasionally, you'll find me baking too, especially during the Christmas season, and other nonsense that I post pictures of because I do that. Yeah, so you can find me there.
All the great moments of a writer's life, for sure.
Absolutely, there's so many incredible adventures that we have.
Yes, absolutely. Jessica, thank you for being on the interview. Thank you, of course, for all you do for Hit the Dice. I really appreciate the fact that you've come on board, stepped up, and enjoy GMing. It's been a great pleasure to watch.
Well, thank you for having me, and I just have such a blast. I feel very honored to be part of Hit the Dice, both as a player and as a GM. I'm still pinching myself about the whole thing, so it's exciting. I mean, I'm just like, I'm doing what? Okay, this is cool.
Yeah, it's very cool. It's very cool.
Yeah.
I muted myself. I wanted to thank Jessica again for the interview. It was a good time. And again, we'll be putting up the full interview, more information on that at the end of the show. All right, so we're going to go through the pockets of the RPG world as if we had knocked them over the head in a back alley. A few tidbits for you before we get to the big interview with Christopher Helton. Dungeon Tube. Do you know what Dungeon Tube is? I haven't really heard the term. I should have, as someone who's aware of BookTube as an author, I should have known it was called Dungeon Tube, but I didn't. Several YouTube creators, ostensibly members of the Dungeon Tube community, have been lamenting the decreased traffic of their videos of one sort or another. Are you a Dungeon Tuber? A Dungeon Tube viewer? Let us know in the comments your feelings on the state of Dungeon Tube. Seriously, though, we know that YouTube creators and those who use YouTube as a medium, and as you know, many of you are watching on YouTube right now, and viewership is down across the board for niche communities like this one. So if you have thoughts on it, we'd love to hear more from you and love to hear about it. If you have a favorite Dungeon Tuber, I don't know if I have a favorite Dungeon Tuber, but I like several of them. If you have a favorite Dungeon Tuber, also let us know that. All right, so Free 5e. We all like free stuff, right? I knew we did. Free 5e is a free, because it's right there in the name, fully compatible open source alternative to Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. You can download it for free, get hard copies at the most affordable rates possible, and those are coming soon, adapt it, and use it however you like. This is one of many systems like that. I came across it very recently and was pretty impressed with what they've done. The PDFs are free, so you can go download those. And see if you're a D&D player, see if this is something that's more to your liking. Always recommend checking out the free stuff because things are getting more expensive. They did run a Kickstarter prior to this, Wormwork Publishing, ran a Kickstarter so that they could offer up the free version of the game and the hard copies as well. So, hard copies coming soon. Check it out. Over on Mastering Dungeons, um, DM's Guild is a community service or community creator platform for creating and publishing Dungeons and Dragons content using D&D assets. So Greyhawk, Forgotten Realms, Spelljammer, etc. Many companies have followed suit. So a lot of companies have creator programs. White Wolf has one. Free League, Free Logan has one. Chaosium has several. Johnstown for the RuneQuest and Arkham. I think it's. Oh, no, I can't remember. But I think it's Arkham. Is Arkham? I think there's Arkham related for their Call of Cthulhu. But so if you're into or interested in the creator community creations, I would check out a lot of those. Sean and Teos at Mastering Dungeons talk about the game scale and its future. It's a great conversation between the two of them. They always have good conversations over on Mastering Dungeons. You can check that on YouTube, and I think you'll be interested, as I will. Okay, so there we go. So now we're going to get to our main interview. I sat down with Christopher Helton, and Christopher was my editor at N-World or N-World, and that's where I got to know him. Know them. And so I think you'll find this a really interesting interview, like I did. Let me go ahead and grab that and pull it up. And here we are. I'm SM Hillman. I'm very happy today to be interviewing someone I've known for a few years, a friend of mine, Chris Helton. Chris, say hello to the folks.
Oh, hello, everyone. I'm happy to be here. Thank you for asking me.
Christopher, go ahead and tell folks a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm a longtime blogger and gaming journalist. I started my blog back in the early 2000s, the blog named Dorkland, and wrote about a number of different things that were interesting to me, primarily gaming, but I also talked about like comics and music and things. And that kind of blossomed into writing for a couple of major websites. I've written for Bleeding Cool and N-World, and then that kind of blossomed into editing in general and for a number of publishers and writing, and bam, here we are.
Awesome. Yeah, we met when Christopher hired me on to write to freelance at N-World or N-World. Yeah, I
always call it N-World.
No, that makes sense, right? Whenever I hear someone say it, like, no, that's how I should be saying it. So at N-World.
Yeah.
So typically, I want to actually hit on all those things, but
I was never corrected by the site owner, so it must be correct.
Yeah, it must be. One of the things that we always ask is, when did you first get into role-playing games, and what was your first game?
Well, I'm old, so really, there wasn't a lot of choices. I grew up in a small town in Indiana, and when I was in 5th grade in 1979, my family had just moved, and so I was at a new school, making new friends. And one day, I was in the school for a couple of months, and one day, one of my friends came up to me during recess, which if anyone needs recess explained to them, I will do that later. But during recess, he came up to me and went, "Hey, have you heard of this game called Dungeons and Dragons?" And I said, "No, I have not." And then that was pretty much it.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I mean, it was like, I think I think I started in like a week or two, either like that Friday or the following Friday, and it's just ever since. So
Now, along the way, especially in the early years, what other games did you run into?
the first game that I played that wasn't D&D was Champions. I
Okay.
want to say like Champions 2, something, one of the early box sets. And then Call of Cthulhu was the next. And because so between the comic books and horror, that really leaned a lot more heavily into my interests. And after about the mid 80s, I was playing pretty much everything except D&D, and I didn't play D&D again until 3rd edition came out, which is when I started writing for games. So
Gotcha. Now, did you already have a love for comics before you got into Champion?
oh yeah, when I was a toddler, my parents owned a convenience store, and it had a spinner rack. And I couldn't really read yet, but you know, they had this rack of these really bright, colorful comics, and I have, you know, kind of distinct memories of reading them, and probably making up my own stuff as I went along. But yeah, I was a comic fan before I got into gaming. So by the time I was gaming, I'd probably been reading comics 5 or 6 years, fairly hardcore. So
Was there one that stood out to you, or the one that sort of like carried through to today that you're a fan of?
I was always a big DC fan, and so I was big on like the Justice League and goofy stuff like the Freedom Fighters comic in the 70s. I liked some of the early Kirby stuff, the 70s Kirby stuff, like his Captain America when he came back to DC, some of his early DC work, or his later DC work. But honestly, the 70s, I think, were a really good time to start in comics, because there was this just kind of explosion of creativity and so many characters. You know, it was like you were seeing like Black and Asian characters headlining comics for the first time, and it was just, you know, each month it was like, oh my god, what is this?
Right.
So and comics were completely different then than they are now, because it was ridiculously hard to get comics back then, because it was like you could go to a grocery store, you could go to a drugstore, if you had like a newsstand, which is another of those things that people aren't going to understand what the hell that means. You could get comics, but you weren't guaranteed that you got them consistently. So
yeah.
I was probably like a teenager, maybe like 13 or 14, before the first time I actually saw a comic store, which is, you know, part of the fun of growing up in a small town. We had like a couple of used bookstores that would sometimes get like old comics, and you know, but so it was really weird, because so that meant that the like comics all had to be self-contained, because you never knew if someone was going to get the next issue.
Right.
So
that's kind of how we had it. We had a hobby store, had a few comics, had one of those spinner racks, but was mostly a train store, honestly. And then but they also had board games, mostly war games, which might explain a lot. But then they were the only store that also had D&D stuff, or any kind of role-playing stuff. And it's funny that you bring up the explosion of color in the 70s. For me, my first Green Lantern was John Stewart.
yeah.
So for me, you know, a black Green Lantern was standard.
Green Lantern.
Right? Yeah, absolutely. So that was kind of how my him and Superman buddying up is kind of how my comics started. But yeah, I mean, small town. So many people don't understand this, so I'm getting us a little off topic. But when Jolly started doing the Knights of the Dinner Table in a town in Indiana, was that like, oh, that's very cool? Or was like, or what the hell is he talking about, kind of thing?
Actually, I grew up in the same town.
You're the
Well,
second
I grew
person
up.
I know.
I grew up outside that town, so
Right.
I lived in a smaller town. The stuff that they did was set in Muncie, Indiana, and I
Yeah.
grew up just outside in Yorktown.
Okay.
So, Jolly's like 5 or 6 years older than I am, something like maybe a little old. I'm not sure, but there is an age difference. So, the odds are that I probably had run into him when I was a kid, but I was a kid,
Right.
so you know.
Yeah.
We would have been in two completely different worlds because it's funny because he and I talked about this once a long time ago at Gen Con, and I actually remember the gaming store that they talk about in the comic opening in Muncie. So
Oh wow.
yeah, I remember because I was reading, I'm going, wait, I know this gaming store, and it didn't for some reason it didn't occur to me that it was set in Muncie, Indiana, and that's where I grew up. The other thing that's an interesting gaming / growing up in Muncie story is that when I was in high school, I played D&D with the oldest son of Bob Ross.
Oh, okay.
So I got to meet him a couple of times, and when I would go over, they lived in the same apartment complex that we did, and I think it was the '90s before I realized that Bob Ross was someone famous.
Right.
Because I was like, he's this like weird stoner dude who lives in our apartment complex. How famous can he be?
Yeah.
Well, because nobody made money on PBS back then, but yeah, so those are two things that I have kind of peripheral connections to because I grew up outside of Muncie and I played D&D as a kid. So
you started Dorkland in 2003, I think. Is that right?
yes.
So what were the origins of that?
So I went to the library one day, and this is probably around like 2002, 2001. I don't remember when it was exactly. But I went to the library one day, and in the new book display, they had this, the branch up the street from where I lived. They used to have this, by the front doors, this big display of all the new books. So you'd come in, the first thing you'd see is the new books.
Yeah.
And I saw this book written by Rebecca Blood that had the weird name of the weblog handbook. And I was like, what the hell is a weblog? So I had picked up the book and I decided to take it home. And it was basically just kind of like a guidebook to blogging as it was in the early 2000s.
Right.
And this is something I've talked about a few times because when I started blogging was absolutely nothing like it is now.
Right.
Original blogging was basically it's basically two words that kind of got smushed together. Web, which, because it's the internet, we know why it's web. And then the second part was log, which basically what you were doing was you were keeping a log of websites. And you would like put up links. A lot of the times you didn't even like comment on them. It was just, this is the topic, here's some links.
Right.
Because search engines did not work very well in the early 2000s.
No.
I mean, years before, like Google even started to take off.
Right. Yeah.
So basically, as it became known, which is anyway, it just it going from keeping a log of things to blog. It just, I don't know. It's a weird etymology, and it just kind of bothers me, I think. But anyway, it went from this. When you started, it was just so you had niche interests, and you would go around and you would find these websites about this, mostly by accident or through the blogs of other people, and then you would start to build up a list of things that were of interest if you were interested in this topic.
Right.
So that was, the early thing. And then it started from that. Then, you started commenting on the sites. It was like going, okay, go to this site. This is a cool site. This is, this person about blah, blah, blah. And then it kind of went, okay, now that we're listening to the sounds of our own voices, we really like this. So let's talk more about the things that we're interested in.
Right.
So, then it kind of, then it went to talking about the topics. And then it'd be like, okay, and here's a link. As you know, I have a background in journalism. Yeah. I studied literature and journalism in college, and so as this whole thing was kind of developing, I started using it more and more to report on things that I was seeing. One of the early breakout posts on my blog was when Guardians of Order imploded.
Okay. I
kept like a running. I had a post, and it was just basically, okay, this is like you're not going to believe what's happening now. Holy crap, George R. Martin is like talking about this, and this is what he said, and and it was that post that kind of broke me out as, hey, this is someone that can do this sort of thing.
Right.
And, so I started focusing more on the gaming aspect of things, although I would still bring in, other things, a lot of source material like comics and pulp stuff that was influential to me.
Yeah.
So, but I started going to like Gen Con and, like local conventions, and I would, talk to creators, and I'd put things up, and I would, I started, people started like giving me games, going, here, why don't you talk about my game? And okay, sure, no problem. And then one year, I can't think of what year it was. I'd have to go back and look. For about 3 years, I had been getting press passes to Gen Con, which at the time I was thinking, why the hell do they keep giving me a press pass? But there also really wasn't much in the way of press at the time. Even, N-World didn't really start until 3rd edition.
Right. Yep.
And this would have been like just before all of that kind of stuff. Blogging was just really becoming a thing. And so I started getting a press pass. And then one year I was reading a comics website that I followed, Bleeding Cool.
Okay.
And I was going through it, and I noticed the sidebar, they had like hey, do you want to write for us? Here's our contact form, send us a thing. And so I sent them a thing going, hey, I'm going to Gen Con. I already have, like my travel arrangements. I have a press pass. I have everything I need. Would you guys be interested maybe if I, wrote like a piece about Gen Con while I was there for you guys? And I heard back ridiculously quick. It was really weird. I was like going, why are these people getting back to me so quickly? And apparently the editor had heard of me. One of their staff had like read something I had written on my blog at some point, probably something horribly opinionated. And they were like, yeah, we've been thinking about, doing tabletop coverage, and if you're interested, which we would definitely be interested in, what we would like is like, can you do like a article every day? And I'm like, sure, why not? I can do yeah, sure, I can do like that's like 4 articles. I can do 4 articles. That's no problem. And keeping in mind at this point, I didn't even own a cell phone.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it was like, before that,
right.
Those that were really popular. So it's like I had a laptop that was terrible, even for the standards of the time. And I lugged it around, and they had a press room with Wi-Fi, and I was able to, upload stuff, and then I started. They liked the pieces that I did, and the editor of the site asked me to do more. I'm like, okay, I can do that.
Yep.
And I still don't understand to this day, but somehow I managed to get an advanced copy instead of 5th edition. So I was one of the first people to write about it, and I actually wrote a review. At the time, Bleeding Cool had a print magazine, and I wrote a review for their print magazine. I think I was probably the first article in print about the game.
Right.
Then things went kind of downhill because it wasn't a good review. I didn't like 5th edition. My problem with D&D is that it leans too heavily into the assumption that you have somebody who understands how all of these moving pieces work.
Right.
And in order to introduce everyone else to the game. And it's not really good at being a starter game.
Yep.
After that, I didn't get as much review stuff from Wizards of the Coast, but
I bet.
yeah. So, but I mean, they were happy that somebody was writing about it in what was considered for those circles, mainstream press. I mean,
For sure.
Bleeding Cool is a big website, but it's interesting because that has sort of, when 5th edition came out, that was something that I wrote about a lot, both on my blog and then when I transitioned to EndWorld, was about how games needed to be better about presenting themselves to new people.
Right. Yep.
And a lot of games just aren't good at that. And right. I mean, it's not to say that they're bad games or they don't have a good play experience, but they all assume that you already know what you're doing and you already have some idea of how games work. And a lot of the time, most of the people doing these were people like, going back to what I was talking about gaming as a kid, these were the people who, like me, were like, okay, I've got this book and I've got that book. And they both have D&D in it, even though one has an A in front of it. So these things must all like work together.
Right. They don't.
And they don't, but we made them work. So I think, but in like the late 70s and early 80s, I understand games not being good about presenting themselves to new people, even though ironically we were all new people at that point.
That's true.
People were still trying to figure out how in the world to write these things. But by the time of 5th edition of the world's greatest role-playing game,
right,
we should know better how to present the material to new people. And that has to kind of like bring it into me, that idea has sort of approached how I have designed games. And have you, you've looked at Action Heroes, right?
Yes, I have.
At some point.
Yeah.
I try really hard to explain to people how things are going to work in this game.
So I have a question too, because I don't think we had gotten to discuss this. So talk a lot about indie games, right, and self-publishing and things like that. And I think that people sometimes get the impression that to have an indie game, or an indie game, is only pure when you've done it in your back room and you've sort of photocopied everything, and it's costing you more to make than it is than you're bringing in. But there's been some fantastically people who are now generationally rich, Calcidion, Colville, and MCDM, everybody at Critical Role, with games that would honestly be considered nominally indie games. What's your take on all that?
I honestly, okay, so here's my controversial opinion. I think that we, as gamers, need fewer games that are designed by a committee and more games that rely on the voice of rely on a specific voice of an auteur.
Right.
Now, I don't like using words like auteur because it makes it sound like I'm trying to be more fancy pants than I actually am.
Right.
But I think of it in a similar way to 70s cinema, when you started to see the rise of the writer-director in American filmmaking, when, you know, people like Scorsese were doing their original, you know, their early works, and you would get a movie and it would be like, that is a Martin Scorsese movie.
Right.
You know, even if it wasn't made by Martin Scorsese, it would be like, that is a Martin Scorsese movie. So the voice of the person making the film became very important. And I think that is something that we need more of in tabletop gaming. I think the idea that everyone has to write in a sort of a blank voice and come together as in a uniform way, when,
Right.
you know, it's like, I'll do this part, you do that part, this part. I think that it is, I don't think it's helped games. I'll just say that. It's
Right.
I don't want to say that I think it's, you know, necessarily bad.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I've got, like, you know, I mean, looking right here, I've got, like, you know, I've got things that were designed by groups of gamers that are, or designers that are good games.
Yeah.
But I think that we really need more where you get the where you're getting individual voices.
Yeah.
And I try to design one, and this is something that developed as I was writing about games, because I when I was writing about games, I would be like, you know, I wrote a lot more about, you know, indie games and the self-published stuff and things like that, because it wasn't getting as much attention as, you know, D&D, Pathfinder, the big games, World of Darkness, the things that we say all in bold and caps when, you know.
Right.
And I mean, it's not that the indie games are good or inherently better, and the, you know, mainstream games are traditionally are worse or whatever. It's just that we need a variety of things, I think, is important. I don't think every game should look like a D&D book. I don't think every game should look like, you know, a Pathfinder book. I don't think every game should look like a Call of Cthulhu book, you know. I think that we need levels of games again. You know, to further torture my film analogy earlier, you know, yes, it is cool to have, you know, the big budget tentpole games, but we also need, like, B-movie games. You know,
Yeah.
we need things that people had to make it. They didn't have much in the way of resources. So, you know, is it a pretty game? Not necessarily, but that doesn't mean it's not a good game.
Right.
And I think we need to foster a better understanding that not every game needs to look and sound like it's published by Wizards of the Coast.
I agree with that. It does really require, I mean, comics and RPGs function better the closer they are to underground projects than
big business, I think. But
well, the closer they are to creators,
yeah,
I think.
Yeah.
And yeah, because I mean, it's one of the things that I would talk about when I was doing reviews or when I was, just talking in general about games was that we needed to hear the voice of the designer more than we were.
Right.
So it's like my games, I write in a fairly conversational tone.
Yes. That's right.
And I mean, that is intentional.
Yeah.
It wasn't that I'm going to write this in a different way than those games. It was that I wanted to, like I said, I think it's important that the games be able to present themselves to new players. And I think if you write your game on the level that you're talking with someone rather than talking to someone,
Yep,
is an important difference to make.
Okay. Agreed. Before we wrap up today, so I noticed the other day that Mike Tresca is stepping down from the editorial position that he held at EN World. And congrats to Mike for the years he was there. Why do you think N World has survived over the years? Changing hands at one point early on, and then really is thriving. At least from the outside, it feels like it's thriving.
Well, I think primarily it's because, there's an audience for people talking about this kind of stuff. And, people want to learn about games, and they want to learn what other people think about games, and, a certain game is worth picking up, and they want to hear gossip.
True.
So honestly, I think I think the fact that, N World got there fairly early.
Yeah.
And, the fact that they were able to, get out of being just about D&D, although they are, the foremost source on D&D stuff,
Yeah.
but they were able to diversify and bring in, other topics and the voices of writers, and I think that's what has brought about their long-term effectiveness.
Gotcha. Cool.
That sounded less enthusiastic than I intended it to be, but it's mostly just because I'm trying to think about what I'm saying as I'm saying it. So
Right.
I really enjoyed my time with N-World mostly. N-World is a great site. I love the people who run it. I enjoyed, being able to write about basically whatever the hell I wanted. I mean, I didn't really have any limits on what I did. I was specifically brought in to be when Morris and I had our initial talks when I was looking at leaving Bleeding Cool.
Yeah.
It was like, I want you. He said, we've got D&D covered, and he goes, I want you to write about stuff that's not D&D.
Yeah.
And I know that's what you like, and that's what you're interested in. So that's what I want you to do. I'm like, that I have absolutely no problem with being the not D&D guy.
Right.
And it did confuse some people, but because I used to get a lot of, well, why aren't you talking about D&D? And I'm like, as we have said a number of times, I'm the person who doesn't talk about D&D. You've got all these other people over here who are talking about D&D, and I'm going to talk about other stuff. So, but, and then when I became an editor and started bringing in people like you, and, I think we diversified even more.
Yep.
And because, I specifically told people to, write about things that A, were important to them, and B, not what the rest of us were talking about.
Right. Yes. Absolutely.
So, yeah.
And I
So
know for me, just really getting into game journalism at that point, that was really helpful for me.
yeah.
You know, to be able to put my own voice to the articles I was writing.
Well, and I tried really hard, and I hope I succeeded, but I tried really hard to encourage the people who wrote for me to develop their own voice.
Yeah.
And I really kind of pushed that, and I had certain things that I told them that I would like them to do, and certain things that I told them I would not like them to do. Did you ever write reviews for me at N-World?
Yeah, I did a few reviews, like the Genesis. I remember. Oh my god, that's a story and a half. But yeah, not a bad one. Not a bad one. But
did you, as to say, did you ever? I don't remember if you got my talk about just because the game isn't for you doesn't mean it's a bad game.
I think so. Yeah, right.
So that means you must have written a piece that you said things that wasn't a good game because I don't like it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that was one of the I had that talk with probably everyone who wrote reviews at some point, and it was like, you need to understand that just because you don't like the game or it's not intended for you, that doesn't mean it is a bad game.
Right.
And some people took to that. Some people went to write other things because they didn't like me kicking their reviews back every time. They would basically say this is a bad game because I don't like it. And or it isn't what I want out of this book, and so why the hell did they even make it? That's
right. Yeah.
No, that's not how we're doing this. It's, I mean, not to say that it's like one of my, when I was writing for Bleeding Cool, one of my most popular reviews was, I wrote a review at the time of Dungeon World.
Okay.
And I did not like that game. I still am not really a big Dungeon World fan. But I understood that what it did, it was effective at doing, and it, for the people that it was intended for, it was a really good game.
Right.
And so I wrote a fairly good review of it, despite being upfront about the fact that I don't like this game.
Yeah.
And so it's I think that is something that people who are writing about games still need to get better at.
Yes.
Because there is still way too much of that.
Agreed.
But I think if you're going to write about games, you have to look at a broader picture than just, this is what I am interested in. I think if I had just gone, I'm just going to write games that I am interested in, which, although I guess I kind of did do that, I would have come up with games that probably would have been of no interest to anyone except for myself. And while, neither of my games so far have huge audiences, there are people, it's weird to me that there's people out there playing them. With this, it's like I designed for me because I thought there was a niche that was unexplored, which is different, I think, than writing for me because this is the right way to do it.
Right. That makes sense.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, I mean, it's like whenever I talk about it and I say, well, I design games for myself, it's weird to say it because it sounds a lot more, like I said earlier, it sounds a lot more self-centered than I intend it to do. But, I primarily, I think that is because you're, as a game designer, you're primarily, you're first designing for your own table.
For sure. Yeah.
Even if that means, just taking like Call of Cthulhu and making changes to it.
Right.
You're still designing for your own table. Once you go into creating a new game, you're still creating for your own table, but you're at the same time creating for your own table with an eye towards other people playing it.
Right.
So, you know, I you know,
Eventually you get out of your hands, right?
yeah. I mean, it's like you root it in what you want out of a game, while at the same time hoping that other people will go, oh, that's an interesting idea. I will try that approach as well.
Christopher, I appreciate you, especially on short notice. I appreciate you hanging out with us today here at Zero Means You're Dead.
That was my pleasure.
Yeah, it was good catching up, and that was a fantastic conversation. I hope folks at home will enjoy it as well. Tell folks where they can find you on the interweb.
The easiest way to find me is probably Blue Sky. I am there at dorkland.itch. Is it itch.io or itch?
Yeah.
I'm the only Dorkland. So if you look for Dorkland, you will find me.
And that brings us to the end of the January 2026 Zero Means You're Dead. As mentioned in an interview with Jessica, the next Cryptid Capture Core, which means the next Hit the Dice, will be January 19th, Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Next Zero Means You're Dead will be in February, first week in February, or maybe the second week, but we're hoping the first week of February. I want to thank everybody for watching. I want to thank Joe for fantastic editing he did on the interviews. I want to thank Christopher again for a fantastic interview, and Jessica as well. Fantastic for being there with me. And hopefully you got something out of the show. If you have any notes, any thoughts, please feel free to share them. Last few comments, Judy Blackcloud. Judy, thank you for being here as always. A.F. Stewart. YouTube is strangling many niche communities. Yes, it is. And A.F. Stewart went religiously to her newsstand in the local candy store. That was fun. And great interviews. Thank you, Anita. Thank you so much for being here as always. Thanks everyone who's here. Thanks everyone who's going to watch in the future. And I will see you in February, because it's always time to go indie now. Bye, everyone.